Ever notice how different cultures have completely opposite ways of saying, "I'm done talking to you," without actually saying it? Some people ghost you politely, others practically write you a dissertation about why they need to leave. Here's the thing, how someone ends a conversation reveals everything about their cultural programming around conflict, politeness, and social hierarchy. And honestly, once you crack this code, you'll never misread social cues again. Let's dive into the fascinating world of conversational exits. Because apparently, even saying goodbye is a cultural minefield that nobody warned you about. Picture this, you're talking to a British person, and suddenly they start saying things like, "right then." And I suppose I should probably doing this weird half-step backward dance. They're not having a stroke. They're performing the most elaborate exit ritual in human history. British people will spend 15 minutes trying to leave a conversation that lasted 5 minutes. They'll say, "Well, I mustn't keep you," even when you were the one who started the conversation. They'll apologize for taking up your time while you're literally standing there wanting to talk more. It's like watching someone try to escape from quicksand made of politeness. Meanwhile, Germans have turned conversation ending into an efficiency competition. They'll literally say, "So, I think we're finished here," and just walk away. No elaborate explanations, no social choreography, just direct communication followed by immediate action. It's either refreshingly honest or borderline rude, depending on your cultural conditioning. But here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't just random communication styles, they're deeply embedded anxiety management systems dressed up as social etiquette. British conversation endings are basically elaborate rituals to avoid any possibility of conflict or offense. They're so terrified of seeming rude that they'll torture themselves with endless polite exits rather than risk appearing inconsiderate. It's conflict avoidance turned into performance art. Think about their historical context. Britain is a small island where everyone has to get along or society collapses. Their entire social system depends on maintaining harmony through elaborate politeness protocols. Ending conversations badly could literally ruin your reputation in a community where everyone knows everyone. Germans, on the other hand, come from a culture that values directness as a form of respect. To them, wasting someone's time with unnecessary pleasantries is actually the rude behavior. Their blunt conversation endings aren't meant to be dismissive. They're meant to be efficient and honest. Now let's talk about Americans, who have created the most bizarre conversation ending hybrid in human history. They'll say, "We should definitely catch up soon," while already mentally planning their escape route. They've perfected the art of sounding enthusiastic about future contact while having zero intention of following through. American conversation endings are basically social contracts that nobody expects to be honored. "Let's grab coffee sometime" is American for "this conversation is over, but I want to seem friendly." It's politeness through false promises, which is either clever social lubrication or systematic dishonesty. Then there are the Scandinavians who have elevated conversation ending to an art form called strategic fading. They don't dramatically exit, they just gradually become less available until the conversation naturally dies. It's like social photosynthesis in reverse. A Norwegian will respond to your messages with progressively shorter replies until you get the hint. Sounds great. Becomes cool, becomes radio silence. It's passive communication that requires advanced pattern recognition skills to decode. Japanese conversation endings are perhaps the most sophisticated system ever developed. They have multiple layers of politeness that function like conversational airlock systems. You don't just end a conversation, you gradually transition through increasingly formal language until everyone understands the interaction is concluding. They'll spend several minutes expressing gratitude for your time, apologizing for any inconvenience they may have caused, and ensuring mutual face-saving before anyone actually leaves. It's conversation ending as diplomatic protocol. But here's what's really fascinating. These different approaches create incredible cross-cultural confusion. Americans think Brits are being fake when they take forever to leave. Germans think Americans are lying when they suggest future meets they don't mean. Brits think Germans are being aggressive when they end conversations directly. Meanwhile, everyone is completely baffled by Scandinavian fading techniques and Japanese politeness protocols. It's like we're all playing the same social game with completely different rulebooks. The really uncomfortable truth is that none of these approaches are actually about communication efficiency. They're all elaborate systems for managing social anxiety and cultural expectations around interpersonal harmony. British people aren't naturally more polite, they're just more terrified of social conflict. German directness isn't necessarily more honest, it's just a different way of showing respect. American false promises aren't meant to deceive. They're meant to maintain social warmth while creating personal boundaries. Each culture has developed conversation-ending strategies that solve specific cultural problems while creating others. It's brilliant and dysfunctional at the same time. Here's where it gets really weird, though. These conversation-ending styles often don't match the actual personalities of the people using them. I've met incredibly warm, genuine British people who still torture themselves with elaborate exit rituals. I've known socially anxious Germans who force themselves to be direct because that's what their culture expects. The system is controlling the people, not the other way around. And don't even get me started on digital conversation endings. Each culture has translated their traditional exit strategies into text messages and social media, creating entirely new levels of confusion. British people will send novels explaining why they can't respond immediately to your casual text. Germans will just stop responding when they consider the conversation complete. Americans will react to your message with an emoji and consider that a sufficient conversation ending. Scandinavians have mastered the art of leaving people on read as a polite social signal. And everyone else spends hours trying to figure out if they've been ignored or if this is just normal communication in that culture. The digital age has basically turned conversation ending into advanced cultural anthropology. You need a PhD in international communication just to figure out if someone is being rude or following their cultural programming. But here's what I find most interesting. Despite all these different approaches, everybody thinks their way is the most considerate. British people genuinely believe their elaborate exits show respect for others. Germans are convinced their directness prevents misunderstandings. Americans think their friendly vagueness maintains social harmony. Everyone has rationalized their cultural programming as moral superiority, which makes cross-cultural communication even more complicated. So what happens when these systems collide? Pure chaos. I've watched British people get trapped in endless exit loops with other British people, both trying to politely end conversations that neither wants to continue. It's like social gridlock caused by excessive politeness. I've seen Germans accidentally offend Americans by ending conversations too abruptly, while Americans confuse Germans by suggesting future interactions they don't actually want. The miscommunication potential is enormous. The Scandinavian fading technique works great with other Scandinavians who understand the signals, but leaves everyone else wondering if they've done something wrong. And Japanese politeness protocols can take so long that people from other cultures assume something important is being discussed. Here's my controversial take. Maybe none of these conversation-ending styles are actually effective communication. Maybe they're all just elaborate ways of avoiding the simple truth that sometimes people want to stop talking. What if we all just said, "I need to go now," when we need to go? What if we stopped pretending that ending conversations requires elaborate social theater? Would the world collapse? Or would communication actually improve? But then again, maybe these cultural differences serve important functions we don't fully appreciate. Maybe British politeness protocols really do prevent social conflicts. Maybe German directness really does save time and reduce misunderstandings. Maybe American vague friendliness really does maintain social networks more effectively. Or maybe we're all just trapped in inherited systems that made sense in different historical contexts, but now create more problems than they solve. The truth is, conversation-ending styles reveal deep cultural anxieties about social harmony, individual autonomy, and interpersonal responsibility. Each culture has developed elaborate systems to manage these competing concerns with varying degrees of success. Whether you find these differences charming or frustrating probably says more about your own cultural programming than about the objective effectiveness of any particular approach. Here's what I want to know. Have you been trapped in cross-cultural conversation-ending confusion? Have you accidentally offended someone by ending a conversation the wrong way? Or been confused by someone else's exit strategy? And here's the bigger question. What would ideal conversation endings look like? Should they be quick and efficient, elaborate and polite, or something else entirely? Is there wisdom we can learn from other cultures' approaches? Or are we all just making this way more complicated than it needs to be? Share your conversation-ending disasters in the comments. I'm genuinely curious about how these cultural differences play out in real interactions. And if you think I've completely misunderstood your culture's approach to ending conversations, definitely let me know. If you enjoyed this cultural deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe for more mind-bending cultural insights, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Which culture should I decode next? See you in the next one.